It turns out that the walnut loop pieces that I've made are some of my more popular items. Someone contacted me recently about doing another walnut loop commission. I don't normally take commissions, but this one was too good to pass up. I bought a couple of large walnut slabs, in part to use for this piece. I also wanted some walnut just to use in future projects, because walnut is so nice. I started out by cutting two 20-inch discs from this slab. If it was any thicker, I would not have been able to cut it with the jigsaw. 20 inches is the swing of my lathe, so it just barely fit. I started contouring the outside of the disc in order to get my first ring. I have a cardboard template that I compare it with to ensure I get a circular profile. When I parted it, I turned it as thin as I dared and then just stopped the lathe and pulled it off the rest of the way. Unfortunately, that leaves a little ridge on the inside that I'll take care of later. I was able to get 4 concentric rings out of this one slab. Then I just repeated the process for the other rings. I could just use the coal jaws for those 4 smaller rings, but I needed a solution for the larger pieces. So I put it between 2 2x4s. I've done this before, where I get it as straight as I possibly can, glue it on, then I turn a tenon and turn it around and mount it in the chuck. And just gently turn the inside and sand it so it's smooth. And because it's hot glue, I could just easily pull it off. Now, everything was going great until my very last ring, and I wasn't recording it, but it flew off the lathe, unfortunately. I decided I'm not going to do anything that large again. The larger it is, the more likely it will come off. I marked the center of the rings, then cut them into 2 pieces. Then sanded the faces flat. I started to glue them together. I'm just using wood glue. At this point I decided if I used all of these rings in one sculpture, it would be too much, I think. Especially if I want to ship it to the client, it's going to be very awkward, and the larger it is, the more likely it is that it will not survive shipping, unfortunately. So I decided to not use the largest rings and set them aside for now. I will probably use them in a future piece. I just hold them together for about 2 minutes, and that's long enough for the glue to get tacky and it stays together. After it was mostly glued up, I smoothed out the glue joints with a rotary tool at first and then hand sanded it. I don't know why I didn't try this before, but I put some blue tape on, and that seemed to help hold it together. And the glue joint was surprisingly strong. And then I glued the final piece on. I press it down for a few minutes and then just let it go and air dry. The client didn't want a base, so I just sanded it flat on the bottom. Once I put the finish on, it just made it really pop. So nice. Really happy with how this turned out, and so is the client. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time in Gaming's Garage.